My name is Amy Petrosky. I'm the director of the health department in town. This is Alex Shipman. She is the administrative assistant for our department. We were contacted by the library. The library was able to access this documentary here. It's about Larry Daffis, an entomologist on the Cape who's doing cutting edge research on the emergence of tick-borne diseases as well as the different ticks that are migrating up north. So this is a short 17-minute presentation that you'll see here, and then after it, I'll answer questions. I'll address some East Longmeadow specific data that we have, as well as talk about specific East Longmeadow programming that we have, and then answer any questions that you guys might have. As you will hear in the video, it's not just about Lyme disease anymore. Right now, the number one thing that we have been programmed and heard about recently, well, in the last couple of years, was Lyme. But as you'll hear through the documentaries, there's a lot more coming up. The CDC has been talking about all the different emerging ticks and tick-borne diseases that we're going to start to hear a lot more about. So the more we can protect ourselves, and the reason I think it's so important to be here to talk to our residents is the more we can protect ourselves, the more we won't be at risk for these things. We start now as these things continue to emerge. We've learned the basics now. So I've talked to you guys tonight, and I'm happy to talk to you anytime after this or anybody else you want to send my way, because protection and prevention is key with ticks. So just a little bit about this documentary. It was screened at the Provincetown International Film Festival and the Woods Hole Film Festival and a dozen libraries across Cape Cod. It is specific to the Cape, but that information is transferable anywhere really in New England. So.
The risk of getting a tick bite is not at a certain time of the year, or a certain day of the week, a certain month. It's year-round. There are 365 days of tick encounter opportunities. The headline is it's not just about Lyme disease anymore. That's clear. We are now dealing with 5 pathogens that will land you in the hospital in a heartbeat. And does the number stop at 5 just because you have 5 fingers on your hand? Doubtful. This is like hand-to-hand combat. You do not want to lose a single fight. One bite can change your life. Finally. And see, she moves pretty well along. Come on, my dear. I happen to be a person that loves bugs and have been probably since I was 5 years old. People don't address me as Mr. Dapsis or the county entomologist. Not many people know what an entomologist is. The question is, am I the bug guy? Am I the insect guy? Am I the tick man? And I'm all of those things. I don't care what you call me, but for people on Cape Cod with any insect problem at all, I am your guy. What we have been learning is there are new ticks and diseases, and there are changes coming along the way with them that will influence where they are and how abundant they are. Things like climate change can't be underappreciated. In the world of ticks, the landscape is not standing still.
Ticks are probably as old as horseshoe crabs, which come long before the first animals with fur, like our relatives. So they predate our species by a lot. They've evolved over very, very long periods of time. They're relatively simple, and they can adapt to a diversity of situations. People talk about co-infections. That means one bite can give you 3 or 4 or 5 different pathogens. And we just don't know what the effects are of having two of those together, let alone having three of them together. It's not like two of them together make you twice as sick. They may make you many-fold sicker. So it's best to just figure out what should we do then to change our behaviors to minimize our exposures.
Steve, it's Larry. How are you doing? When I saw the data on Friday, I just about fell out of my chair. The number of needles we found in the haystack was just kind of staggering. We found detectable levels of powassan in 4 out of 6 sites on the Cape, ranging from Falmouth all the way to Truro. It was a stunner. It was a stunner.
The sites that are highest in incidence are actually the more residential sites opposed to the more rural sites. That seems to be a pattern.
What we're looking at is that a high prevalence of this virus in the tick population with very few cases, to our knowledge, of disease in people.
Somehow that pathogen isn't, that powassan virus isn't getting transmitted. We are at the cusp of starting to understand all those factors.
Lots of the game changer is because the transmission rates are not a matter of 24 or 48 hour feeding times. It can be a matter of 15 minutes that you can have a tick attached to you and acquire infection.
What I don't want to do is panic people. What we need to do is make people aware this is rare, but there is an exposure risk out there.
Talk to us about the latest disease from ticks.
The newest player that we have been working on is the powassan virus.
What's it called?
Powassan. This thing didn't hop off the bus yesterday. This thing has been on the Cape for some time. It's just probably flown under the medical radar screen. This is something similar to like West Nile virus. People can be exposed to this and absolutely not come down sick. In a few cases where this what we call neuroinvasive, that goes into your, so you get encephalitis or meningitis, that's when things get really dicey. And it's on average, it's fatal in about 10% of the cases.
Larry Dapsis, can't thank this guy enough. Have a great Monday, everybody. Enjoy the convention. I'm Pat Dismaris. Good job.
It's a wrap. Last time I played here, I was 52. That's when I hung up the pads. The hips were wearing out, and it was time, but boy, do I miss it. It's absolutely wonderful in there. It's noisy, but it's my place of solitude. When I do something like a workshop, I'll say, raise your hand if you have been affected or know someone who's been impacted by a tick-borne disease. Everybody in the room raises their hand. As I learn more about who's impacted by these diseases, particularly kids and older people, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything possible to protect them. The data just scream that they are the ones that need the most help. I've met people that have not only had Lyme disease once, but as high as 5 times. This thing can and does turn lives upside down. My job in some respects is to take business away from hospitals and doctors, and I'm a pit bull with a bucket of KFC. This is a problem that I will not let go of. You know the area where you picked this up, because you were having lunch.
Right, so out the back door, just to your left, I cut a trail through the woods that kind of winds down and around and
Okay.
ends right about there. So this particular day, my daughter Matilda and her friend had a lemonade stand out on her bike path. They were sitting in a couple of nice little plastic chairs. I sat myself down on the ground and didn't even think about it.
Where's your lemonade stand? So right here at the,
Yeah, basically, it's so I can take you back out there, but it's.
so that's where you had the bites. Well, when the female tick lays her eggs, it's a cluster of about 3,000 or 4,000 eggs. So generally, if you bump into one, you meet a whole lot of the family. Unlike deer tick, this thing doesn't like little creatures like mice and voles and shrews. It prefers intermediate sized hosts. This is probably a beautiful corridor for animals like coyotes and deer and turkeys. And so for you to find this, basically right next to the trail, that's why I want to set up the cameras and kind of see at night. Because
It didn't look like ticks. We've had ticks on us. We know ticks. We know what a tiny little pinhead deer tick looks like. These were so much smaller. So much smaller. Although some of them were stuck on my body attached, other little specks were running up my chest. And that was a moment where I really started freaking out. Later on, we counted the welts on my body. There were 182 ticks attached to my body. So every time my hair brushed my neck or a thread from my clothes tickled, or I lay down in bed and my sheets brushed my skin, I physically felt like there were ticks crawling on me again.
Lone Star, they're night and day. Lone Star ticks, they can run, they have great vision, they will chase you. Whereas deer ticks are blind and just kind of a passive ambush predator, waiting for dinner to come to it. You wouldn't encounter deer tick larvae out in a grassy open area in direct sunlight, but apparently Lone Star tick kind of laughs at those conditions and just enjoys it. Lone Star has its own set of diseases that it's known to transmit to humans, but the real joker in the deck is that the bite of a Lone Star tick can trigger an allergy to red meat consumption. And so if a person doesn't know they've been bitten and they consume beef or pork, they could get into a life-threatening situation and they don't know why. There's pretty good evidence that there's an established breeding population here. That bike path is what I think is a perfect highway for the animals that host this tick to help an invasive species move further into places where people live and recreate.
What we're seeing with ticks and tick-borne diseases in New England is an increase above anything that we had seen in historical times. When we look at what's happened in the recent couple of hundred years, let's say since Columbus's time, we see that we've been changing the landscape.
When Europeans settled North America, we started cutting down all the forests, creating farmland, building homes. We fragmented the forest into little patches. When you reduce something to a smaller patch, you reduce biological diversity, and that seems to be the key.
Now, more and more people want to live in the suburban environments. We like big open spaces surrounded by edge, which are perfect places for ticks. So changes in our behavior, changes in our landscape, create a perfect storm of bringing ticks and people together at the same time in the same place.
Oh, that's a pretty quick find, just looking at this randomly. When they were initially describing the Lone Star tick, they almost named it the turkey tick because of that association. So it's already gotten very interesting. When we first found Lone Star tick, we found it very well established on the Mid-Cape, basically in West Barnstable. But now we have confirmed that it's in West Falmouth, right next to Joy's house. Lone Star tick is not all over the Cape, but it is starting to show up in different places. And we're trying to learn, okay, how that process is occurring and get some idea of what the future might look like with this tick. Ticks are here to stay for the long haul. They are so abundant, you can't eradicate them. You're not going to spray your way out of this problem. There is no silver bullet solution here. When you have big problems, people look often up the ladder for help. And on this, it doesn't seem apparent that the Centers for Disease Control is going to come marching through that door anytime soon with a broad-scale solution for everybody. Come on in. This is something we solve at a local level. We got to help ourselves. You live in Brewster? You happen to be the third highest incidence rate of Lyme on Cape Cod.
We come from Nantucket, so we know about ticks.
You certainly do. I'll go visit and do a workshop at, say, a golf course, and I show pictures and I say, I don't see a golf course. I see tick habitat there, tick habitat there, and even tick habitat there, right where you're almost standing. How often do you, because ticks and gardening go hand in hand. And it's important for me to help other people understand those same things. Wait, we can't leave without talking about ticks. Do you trade your clothing and footwear? That is something that I think is key. We want to make this as easy as getting up in the morning, getting dressed, and brushing your teeth. Cape Cod is a beautiful place to spend outdoor times. There's lots of things to do. We don't want people to be holed up in their houses. We want people to be tick aware, but not tick afraid. Well, actually, these are nymph stage ticks. This is the stage that's out there right now. They're about the size of a poppy seed, and kids have the highest incidence rate of Lyme in the state. One of the comments I get from people is that, Larry, you can't win this fight. We're not going to win the whole war in one fell swoop. I look at this as every single person I can advise and keep out of a hospital because they prevented a tick bite, that's a victory. What scares you more, ticks or mosquitoes? Because we can cover both.
You've got both? Yeah, ticks.
Ah, then I'm your guy.
Good.
And it's going to be a series of individual victories that will make the difference.
The CDC reports that illnesses from mosquitoes and ticks and flea bites have tripled in the U.S. in the last 13 years, and that the number of reported tick-borne diseases has more than doubled in the last 13 years. Again, what the CDC recommends to do without this is to put more funding at the local and state level. So far, that is, well, it's not matter that is happening actually, but other places mostly that is not happening. We'll go through the PowerPoint real quick. It's very general information that I wanted to put somewhere so you could take home with you in case you did encounter a tick. But we'll just talk about it a little bit. So what we're talking about is Lyme, Pasawin. I put Triple E and West Nile on here. So they're all arborviruses. This is the family that they fall into. The common ticks that we have around here, he talked about, we all know about the deer tick, because that's the one that carries Lyme disease, and the Pasawin that is emerging. He talked about the Lone Star tick. That woman had 186 bites on her body. One of the ways that we're tracking these in East Long Meadow, what we have is through that tick bite brochure that you have there. So we encourage everyone, you can send your tick to college, is the tagline. It goes to the UMass State Lab. It normally costs $55 to $100. You find a tick, you send it to them, and they say what you might have been exposed to. So if that tick had Lyme disease, you'll know in 3 days that the tick that was engorged in your body had Lyme disease. Now that's not a medical diagnosis that you have Lyme disease, but it helps your doctor to know what to explore. So that's on the, go ahead.
Do you actually feel it bite you? Because I had one on my knee, I found it in the shower. I didn't feel any bite.
You know, people are different, but mostly I would say no. You feel it once it's engorged and embedded in your skin.
Yeah, you can actually tell that it's got some of your blood in it.
Okay, this one I was able to pull it off, but I did have to
Pull it.
fight it to get it off.
Yeah. So in addition to helping you guys with knowing what your tick was exposed to, what it does is it helps us, because we get a report. No personal identifying information is included, but what ticks are being found in East Long Meadow. So then that can help me identify and inform our residents, like, hey, we have been finding these Lone Star ticks. I haven't got a report of that yet, but it does give us a tracking of the numbers of ticks that are being reported, what ticks they are, and what they're carrying. So it's good for you guys medically, it's also good for us data tracking wise to use that program.
Did you say the Lone Star does not transmit disease? It just is a kind of an itchy thing?
The Lone Star can make you allergic to red meat.
Yeah, but no particular disease.
No particular disease, no.
I got it up on my,
You do have-
it's on my phone, but.
Oh, perfect.
Did you say if you send a ticket, it's $55 to have
We subsidize it, so it's only
Oh.
$5 for East Long Meadow residents.
Oh.
Thank you, I did not finish that sentence. Yeah, so normally it's a lot more expensive. Right now, the state got a grant to look at the Pasawin and see where it is throughout the state from the CDC. So right now, the $100 test is only $5 for East Long Meadow residents. So you're getting a lot of information for much cheaper than what it normally is.
So what's the process then? How do you do it?
So the process, we'll jump around, it's a great question.
Okay.
So the process is you would remove the tick, you'll put it into a Ziploc baggie or some kind of sealable container or pill bottle, and then you would send it into UMass. You go online. If you need help with using the online tool, you can come to our office. Alex is happy to submit it for you if you're not comfortable with using online portals. You'd send it in through regular mail, and they give you the report within 3 days.
I'm from Hampton. Do they have that in Hampton, in Springfield?
It's available to any Massachusetts resident, but it is not subsidized. East Long Meadow is subsidized. Since they are testing through the CDC grant, but it won't be only $5. I don't know what it is with just the subsidy from the CDC, and that subsidy is only good until it runs out. So I'm not sure what that threshold is for other communities, but for us it is that $5 rate. Recommend you talk to your elected officials to put some funding behind this.
Yeah. This is great that East Long Meadow is doing it.
Yeah, it was.
Sounds like they're the only town around that is.
I can't say that because I don't know for sure, but I do know one of the also, we are jumping around, but we'll just do it. One of the other great emerging prevention techniques that we're using is this year we're doing a pilot program for treating one of the fields. So we selected a field that has a high youth population. We're using all natural chemicals. They're going 3 times this summer, and they're treating it. So what we're gonna do, I checked it for ticks in the spring. We have treated it every month of the summer, and then I'll go and compare any of the ticks that I find in the fall with some of the other fields to see if what we were doing was effective. Right? Because the only way to really tell if its efficacy is to compare it to other fields that have not been treated. So that's gonna happen in September, October, because there's a reemergence of ticks back in that time frame. So if you look, one of the charts is kind of the life cycle of the tick. It comes out early, late spring through the summer, but then in the fall again, it does reemerge heavily based on the life cycle. And you know, Larry, one of the things I love that Larry said in that is that there's, I have it written down here, exactly what he said. This is not my notes. He said that the risk of getting a tick bite is not a certain time of year. There are 365 days to encounter the opportunity, which is true, right? So we have higher times, which are the spring, summer, and the fall time. But you can go out on the coldest day of the winter with a dog, walking your dog on a path, and come in with one of you having a tick. Because they are hardy creatures, they will find you whenever it's easy. The other thing to note while we're talking about the different types of ticks is one of the things that Larry said is those Lone Star ticks were found in a grassy patch in the middle of a field. You're not going to find deer ticks there, right? One of the great things about deer ticks is they kind of, it's called, they perch, right? They're not aggressive. They come on you because you've passed them and they just have, it's questing, it's called questing. So you pass them and they're on your skin and they find a nice warm spot and there's some grass in here to show you where they live. Whereas those Lone Star ticks, they're aggressive. They can live in the heat and the sun because they're coming up from the south. They don't mind the elements, whereas the deer ticks like the grassy areas, the leaf areas, and those perimeters. So when we're treating, back to the treating, when we are treating, we're treating the perimeter of the field. Any questions on that? Okay. So some of the data for East Long Meadow. This chart right here, you'll see it's pretty small, but this is 2015, 16, 17, and 18. You'll see we had a peak in 2016 and it's steadily going down. Now, you'd think if ticks are becoming more present and the viruses are more prevalent, why are our numbers going down? From a public health perspective, I'd like to think it's awareness. More people are being alerted to the fact that I need to do a tick check. I need to wear these things. I need to cover my body. So people in East Long Meadow, I think, are heeding that. You know, we've had a big drive in the health department since 2016 on ticks. We started the Send a Tick to College. We started the education outreach, LCAT segments. So I think for East Long Meadow, that's part of the reason that the numbers are going down. The next East Long Meadow specific, oh, go ahead.
Is that the people infected or number of ticks?
These are people. These are,
okay. Did you have data on approximation of the population of ticks?
We don't, because no one's collecting the data of the ticks. That's another reason why sending those ticks to UMass is so important, because we can start to get that trend. Depending on how good this pilot program is with the ticks, we may try to expand that next year and do some more research on that and collect the ticks, but as of this point, we're not. So this is people, and I know it's small, but there's probable, confirmed, and suspected. So Lyme disease is a reportable disease now, so they can start to track this stuff. So it goes into a virtual gateway that we get alerted to every time a new probable suspected Lyme disease case is found. I will suspect that in the coming years, you'll start to see a trend of other diseases, other viruses, because they're going to start to see them more, so they're going to start to test for them more. Right, they're emerging, so there's not one of the first things that your primary care will test for. Yeah,
Just a question, is the people in East Long Meadow, but there's no way to differentiate, do they spend a month on the Cape and then come home and get their Lyme disease versus getting it here?
That's true.
Right?
Right, that's accurate. One of the things that we have a public health nurse who does just Raven, because it's required by law. We are hoping to get a public health nurse for the department eventually. But she does do a follow-up on these cases. So if you had Lyme and your doctor sent that information into the network, she would get that alert and she would call you and try to do a follow-up. You know, did you spend the summer on the Cape? Where are you outside? What park were you at? Stuff like that. So we can try to collect that data. But no, as of right now, we don't. Kind of like a foodborne illness. We would do the same thing for a foodborne illness. We do that kind of back history. So then another thing that Larry said in the video is the highest cases of Lyme are children, right? In East Long Meadow, this breaks it down by age. So the first column, I'll use mine, is 3 to 18. So this is the youth. Then we have 19 to 35, 36 to 64, and then over 65. For us, the highest cases, so this graph right here is a little misleading because the highest percentage for us, 40%, is the 50 to 65 age bracket. And that's about 40% in East Long Meadow. 40% of the confirmed cases are in that middle age, that 50 to 65 age range. The next highest percentage is youth, which is 30%. Now, that doesn't surprise me based on the statistics of our town. Our town is mostly the older folks and younger folks. That middle age range in our town is a small portion of our demographic. So this data isn't surprising. But another thing that's important is that, you know, these are the two groups that are going out around their homes. These groups aren't going on those long hikes. They're not going on the river kayaking trips. I mean, they might be, but most of these people are going around their home. And that's important because people feel safe around their home. But even though you're just doing gardening in your backyard, or you're playing in the backyard with your kids, or your kids are rolling down the hill, those are still important to do. Take the precautions and do the tick checks when you come in. You know, you say, oh, I'm going for a hike. You put on your socks over your pants, you wear the permethrin, you put on the DEET. But it's not, it can happen anywhere. Just point to that. All right, so now we'll just go over our quick ways to protect you and your family from ticks. It's important to wear light clothing when you're going out, playing outdoors, mowing your grass, gardening, because you'll be able to see the ticks on them. The EPA has a website to help you identify what the best source of protection for you is. DEET is very common. Anything up to 50%, nothing over 50% and below, I would say 30 to 50. EPA says anything over 50 is not more effective. So more is not always better in that case. Learn how to properly remove ticks, which we'll talk about. Avoid the tall grass, shrubs, walk in the middle of paths. Now this is specifically for the deer ticks, which is what we're focusing on today. In your yard, remove the potential habitat. So take away those pile of leaves, keep your grass low. You know, all that, those piles in your yard can be a great habitat for them. And then furniture, mattresses, trash, and whatnot, the public nuisances. Tick checks. So this is really probably the most important thing. When you come inside, within 2 hours, you should check you and your family for ticks. My family and I, we come inside, we have first thing we do when we come inside from mowing the lawn or playing outside. Common areas are in the hair, in and around your ears. They like the warm, dark places. Under your armpits, inside your belly button, around your waist and groin area, and behind your knees. The warm, the dark area. I think someone earlier was saying it was behind their leg. You know, those are the areas that you'll find. You want to make sure your clothes come off and don't put them in the hamper. Because then any ticks that are on there are finding their ways onto the floor, your dogs, or to the towel that you're using. Put them right into the washing machine. They say put them in the dryer for 2 hours. I always just wash them, but dry for 2 hours. Oh no, wait, dry for 20 minutes? Shower within 2 hours. I think it's dryer for 10 minutes. Oh, dry for 10 minutes, yeah, thank you.
Now, taking a shower, I was always curious about this. I mean, that's effective. Are you coming out of the woods, you hop in the shower and they just tend to wash off?
Yeah, because they don't usually implant right, they don't usually embed themselves right away. So if you can get them before they're implanted, they can wash off, right? So you're getting rid of them. That's why it's important to do it fast.
And just the water flowing on your skin.
Yeah, I gotta give your head a jostle. I mean,
yeah, but you can't get every part of it.
No, you can't. You can't get every part, but it's every little thing that you do is gonna make that little bit less likely.
So, 2 hours, there's a likelihood that the will become attached.
Correct. Yeah, 2 hours is.
Now, the ticks, they say they gotta be embedded for like 48 hours before.
For Lyme disease, it's 36 to 48 hours. So what Larry was talking about in that video was the Passawan, and that's 15 minutes. So that's one of the things that why the Passawan is a game changer, is they're talking about, because you know, you can find a tick embedded in you, usually. It's going to get bigger, right? Ticks, if you've seen an embedded tick, it gets, engorged tick, it gets big. Whereas 15 minutes, that's a fast time frame, and it's on and off. You know, so that's one of the reasons why.
Oh, it's on and off, it's already bitten you, and then it's
15
off.
minutes, that's all it needs to transmit, yep.
What are the symptoms of that disease, I think?
You know, it's funny, they're all flu-like symptoms. They all start with flu-like symptoms. And that's one of the reasons it's important, if you can get it and get it tested, to know, because it's going to take, it takes a while for your doctor to start thinking thinking this.
Was it?
The Passalin is like specifically is called the tick-borne fever. So the main symptom of that is a fever.
Have we seen them here?
Passalin, we have no confirmed cases of Passalin here.
That's good.
So these are some ways to protect yourself. So DEET is one of the most common, this one says according to the CDC it does plateau at 50%. That's something that, what the DEET does is it makes ticks and mosquitoes less attractive to us, right? It kind of masks our smell. Whereas permethrin, what that does is that only goes on your clothing. So that's what Larry was talking about in the video, treat your clothing. That goes on your clothing, it actually kills them on contact. So if you have permethrin treated clothing and a tick or a mosquito is to get on you, it kills them on contact.
So you can't buy the permethrin?
You can.
But only embedded in clothes, it's not something you can spray on.
You can spray it on your clothes.
You can?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I got mine on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Dick sells them.
Dick sells it, yes.
Yeah.
So, but you can also buy clothes that are already pre-treated.
Right.
And they're great.
Wash off?
It's good for it tells you like 120 washes.
Is that the
So,
bugs away, they call it?
yes. Yep.
Clothing.
Mm-hmm. And the ones you spray on yourself, whatever bottle you buy will tell you how many washes it's good for.
Will that make you sick?
No, well, the EPA, I can only give you the EPA's guidance says no, that it's safe. But you should definitely go to the EPA website and look to see if it's good for your family.
It says it's only, you should only use it on your clothing.
Correct.
But your clothing touches your skin, so
Yes.
that sounds.
But it's
kinda
dry
strange.
versus.
Right, it's not.
You're not spraying it onto your skin.
You don't
It's not
spray it when it's
spraying
on you.
it.
So the direction would be take your clothes to a well-ventilated outdoor area, spray your clothing, let them dry,
So
wash
after
them.
it dries, then it
Yeah.
can.
Correct.
The absorbency of permethrin is very, very low. It can't really penetrate your skin.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Is it worth getting your yard sprayed for ticks? By a chemical company, which I hate.
You did mention a natural spray you're using on one of your test fields?
Yep.
Well, what is that? And can we
It's-
make it ourselves?
Yeah, I'm sure you could. Yes, it's a combination of eucalyptus and a bunch of different herbs. If you look it up online, you'll find the concoctions. Should you have your yard sprayed? I think that depends on how heavily you use your yard. If you're able to do tick checks regularly, can you pre-treat yourself? I can't make a recommendation one way or another on that.
Are they doing anything to try to limit the reproduction of ticks? Like with the Zika mosquitoes, the Zika virus, they were doing some DNA modifications and having those mosquitoes breed and sterilizing
The others.
the offspring.
I think you saw in the video there was $3 million spent on mosquito control and $319,000 spent on tick control. The year this film was great. So there.
I guess that's my answer.
Yeah. In terms of protecting your yard, they do make tick tubes, which they take cotton balls, treat them with permethrin, right? So then they disrupt the cycle because then the mice come and take those cotton balls for their nests. Those cotton balls are filled with permethrin. They bring it back. The mice now are killing the ticks that come in contact with all of them and their nest. So you're killing them before they get on you guys, but that's as close as to what you're talking about that I think
What
is.
are the natural predators of ticks?
I don't think there are any natural predators of ticks.
Chickens.
Guinea hens.
Chickens love ticks.
I think guinea
Turkeys.
hens do.
Possums. Yeah, I did read about the chickens.
Would they just eat them?
They'll eat them. Yeah, they're really like the only, but like.
I love turkey.
Yeah, with chickens, okay.
Well, turkeys, he was saying
carry
the
the
Lone Star
ticks,
ticks
yeah.
are almost called turkey ticks because they are commonly associated with the breeding areas of the turkeys. So, we talked about this, and I'm sure this is a review, but to remove a tick, fine tip tweezers, you want to make sure you're pulling upward in a steady motion because you want to make sure that nose or whatever it is that's embedded, that you're pulling that out as well. Make sure you sanitize the area after. I use alcohol. Sanitize your tweezers for sure. After remove the tick, thoroughly clean your hands, and then you would save the tick for identification, right? So you use that brochure to send it in and have them tested. Again, here's the discount that we talked about. Very fast results.
You wouldn't wanna put the tick in alcohol, because that was one of the suggestions, putting it in alcohol.
You can, they can test it they can test a leg. If you can only get a tiny piece of the tick, you can send it in. If you have it sitting in alcohol, you can send it in. If you, there used to be saying to freeze it, put it in your freezer in case you did get sick, then they can test it. They can test it then. It's really incredible what the UMass Labs
So
do.
the alcohol doesn't kill the pathogens?
No, it's because they're testing the DNA of the tick.
Oh,
They're not, it's always actually the DNA that they're testing.
well, they're not testing it for pathogens? Or
Well, they are testing it for the pathogen, it would be in the,
in the DNA, oh,
yeah, that's what they said, right?
I think so.
yeah, okay.
They can test it, whatever it is, they can test it. So while I have everyone here, you're interested in ticks, I'm just gonna do a quick plug for mosquito, just because there is West Nile virus season. In your yard, while you also are looking at your tick environment, take a look for that mosquito environment. Mosquitoes can breed in anything as small as a baby's toy, a kid's toy in that backyard. Mosquitoes can lay their larvae and start to breed. So eliminate standing water. If you have a swimming pool, it should be running frequently. Keep it well chlorinated. Patch any tears in your screens. That way there's no mosquitoes getting in and biting you unexpectedly. Keep your gutters clean. And again, just 80% of people who are infected with West Nile show no symptoms. It's only the 20% who have really weakened immune systems that would show symptoms of West Nile virus. But otherwise,
How do we get tested if we have a virus in it?
you specifically West Nile? I don't even know if doctors would test you for West Nile if you don't have a weakened immune system. So if you had West Nile that made you so sick that you were in the hospital because it was really, really making you sick, then they might think to test for West Nile, but it's not something, if you went into the doctors feeling flu-like symptoms, that they would say, oh, we should make sure we test you for West Nile.
They did find those 2 people though, that they did test that had it in Connecticut.
Okay, in Connecticut, not in East Long Meadow, because we have no cases in East Long Meadow. Anyone watching on LCAT, no cases in East Long Meadow.
Yeah, but to know that it's there and there was a way for
Yeah.
tests.
So we used to, as you guys know, probably spray from the helicopter in April every year. If you're from East Long Meadow, we used to treat for mosquitoes with a substance called BTI, which is a natural occurring soil bacterium. We would fly around and hit the wetlands. We started to do a little research into the efficacy of that, and with some help from the state lab, we discovered that mosquitoes don't even start breeding until really the larva until June. West Nile virus, last year our first confirmed hit was the July 27th, and this year it wasn't even until August. So spraying for larvae in April for mosquitoes and viruses that are not present in our community until July or August was not effective. So we have changed our treatment methods. We are still doing the catch basins. We're doing those monthly. That holds a lot of water, high breeding grounds. We are treating those monthly because that's what you need to do in order to stay. It's still the same chemical, still BTI, which is all natural, and we think that's much better. The state this year is doing surveillance for us, so there are still traps out once a week to see what mosquitoes we have. Are we finding mosquitoes that have West Nile virus or Triple E? And I think they're even doing some Zika testing just to ensure that there's none in this area. So we are still doing surveillance. We're not doing the spraying from the helicopter. That was a big decision for our community. It caused a lot of concerns, but it really was ineffective and a large, it cost a lot of money to do something that wasn't even emerging until July or August.
How do they do the catch basins?
BTI pellets.
Oh.
So it goes in there and it's like, that blue pellet that you can put in your toilet that keeps your toilet blue for 30 days. It's just like that. It slowly dissolves, so it's constantly releasing that chemical. Any new larva that's being dropped in there is killed. So it works over the whole 30 days.
Do they just spray that in the woods or just everywhere?
The BTI?
When
No,
they
it's,
did it?
when they did the BTI, they sprayed it over our wetlands and the quarries and the
I
areas
didn't know if
that.
they were doing it over houses. and
Yeah, they were.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now,
Lots of people say that.
if you did have a tick on you, and would you have to get that bullseye thing in order to know that you had a problem? Or
That's a medical question. I would refer you to your medical provider. all cases are different, and really what I'm trying to do is help prevent that. Once that happens, that's a conversation with the doctor.
Thank you.
Yeah, and no, we're good. My business card is up there. If you have any questions that come up, thank you all for coming. It was
Thank
great.
you.
Very informative.
Good.
Yeah, I want to give them a